Namaskar. My name is Mitra Bandhu Poudel. Welcome you all to this special program entitled Diplomatic Eye. This will be an in-depth analysis on different issues regarding international relations, foreign policy and diplomacy. Today I have come up with the second edition of this program. I will be exploring Nepal-China Relations, Belt and Road initiatives and safeguarding measures of Nepal's national interest. Nepal-China Relations and Belt and Road Initiative, how to avoid debt trap. Nepal and China have a long history of cordial relationship. Nepali monk Buddha Bhadra visited China in early 5th century. Princess Bhrikuti of Nepal married to Tibetan king in the 7th century, and Nepali artist Arniko visited China and contributed the art of pagoda Shaili style in the 13th century. By reviving the long-standing cultural, social and economic link between the two nations in a way that is relevant to contemporary circumstances, the diplomatic relations between Nepal and China established on August 1 marked a landmark in the foreign policy of Nepal. Two governments have further agreed that the following 5 principles: mutual respect for each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty, non-aggression, non-interference in each other's internal affairs for any reasons of an economic, political or ideological character, equality and mutual benefit, and peaceful coexistence. By 1960, Nepal and the People's Republic of China had established formal diplomatic ties and exchanged resident ambassadors. In 1956, a new treaty was signed between China and Nepal that put an end to the Treaty of Thapathali of 1856, and Nepal acknowledged Tibet as a province of China. In 1960, Nepal and China signed a separate treaty of peace and friendship that included a boundary adjustment agreement. Nepal remained impartial throughout the 1962 Indo-China War. Since that time, the two sides have maintained amicable ties while adhering to the 5 principles both in law and spirit. Over the past 10 years, Chinese President Xi Jinping has outlined a number of initiatives, including the Belt and Road Initiatives BRI in 2013, Global Development Initiative GDI in 2021, Global Connectivity Initiative GCI in 2022, and Global Security Initiatives GSI in 2023. He asked the international community to support these ideas. Nevertheless, I am going to highlight on Belt and Road Initiatives Nepal's position and case of Sri Lanka. Initially, it used to be saying one belt, one road. What is that? A corridor connecting China with Mongolia, Central Asia, Russia, Iran, Turkey, the Balkans, Central and Eastern Europe, and ultimately Germany and the Netherlands was the goal of a visit by Chinese President Xi Jinping to Kazakhstan and Russia in the fall of 2013. Economic belt and road is this: a maritime Silk Road and that connect South Asia, China with Southeast Asia, Bangladesh, India, the Persian Gulf and the Mediterranean, finally finishing in Germany and the Netherlands, was announced by Chinese Prime Minister Li Keqiang on a subsequent visit to Southeast Asia. The One Belt One Road OBOR strategy is the modern rebirth of the historic Silk Road, which connected over 60 nations with a combined population of over 4 billion and which contributed nearly 1/3 of the world's GDP. There are basically 6 economic corridors under BRI. Number 1, China-Mongolia-Russia Economic Corridor. Number 2, New Eurasia Land Bridge Economic Corridor. Number 3, China-Central Asia-West Asia Economic Corridor. Number 4, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Number 5th, Bangladesh-China India-Myanmar Economic Corridor. And number 6, China Indo-China Peninsula Economic Corridor. Among these 6 economic corridors, let me briefly highlight the 2 which have strategic importance in terms of connectivity and India's indisposition to be a part of. They are CPEC and BCIM AC. As far as CPEC is concerned, this corridor connects Pakistan's Gwadar port in the south to Kashagar, Xinjiang in the north. For the construction of roads, railroads, oil and natural gas pipeline, optical fiber networks and ports from Kashagar to Gwadar, 2 governments have developed a tentative long-term plan. The projects include the upgrading and reconstruction of the Karakoram Highway, a brand new international airport, an expressway connecting Karachi and Lahore, and a cross-border optical fiber network between China and Pakistan. Former Indian ambassador to Nepal Rakesh Sood claims that Pakistan is an integral element of BRI as it is a member of the Sino-Pak Economic Corridor. As some of the projects are situated in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and the northern regions which India continues to be a part of. This has raised security concern in India. The decision by the Chinese president to invest $47 billion in the rail and road network linking West China to the important port of Gwadar in Pakistan has angered India because the trade route and railroad link pass through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. India claims that it jeopardizes both its security and sovereignty. This is one of the reasons why India has emerged as the BRI most vociferous critic. Now, second, BCIM-EC. The Joint Working Group for the Bangladesh-China, India, Myanmar Economic Corridor BCIM-EC met for the first time in December 2013 in Kunming, China, where they agreed to cooperate in sectors like commerce, investment and people-to-people connectivity. The effort appears to have lost its ownership, direction and goal. India and Myanmar both stopped referencing the BCIM after 2015, while emphasizing its more than 2,000 kilometer border with China and unique relationship with that country. Myanmar has since 2019 advanced the bilateral project known as the China-Myanmar Economic Corridor CMEC. According to Mahendra P. Lama, Myanmar hosted the most recent BCIM forum in 2015. Senior government representatives have always represented Bangladesh, China and Myanmar. However, in the case of India, delegations were primarily made up of think tanks, business people and former diplomats. India has never actively and directly engaged, according to Mahendra P. Lama in Kathmandu Post. When we are talking about Nepal and China had signed a framework agreement on BRI on May 12, 2017. This was valid up to May 12, 2020, subject to renewal according to Article 5.1 of the agreement paper. According to Peters 2019, the idea of a railway linking China to Nepal has captured imagination since Mao Zedong and King Birendra first mooted the idea in 1973. During Chinese President Xi Jinping's official visit to Nepal in October, plans to carry out an extended detailed feasibility study into Nepal-China railway project were among 20 agreements signed between the two countries. Initial budget for the railway would cost approximately $3 billion. The 70-kilometer railway line some argue to be a game changer, while others term it as vulnerable. The route that climbs from 1,400 meters above the sea level to around 4,000 meters goes through the Himalayas. This route, according to geologists, will be vulnerable to landslide and earthquake. Moreover, as much as 98% of the route would have to be made up of tunnels and bridges. Steep slopes, complex geographical terrain and need for a huge investment on tunneling would be a great challenge. An astonishing fact is passenger trains will even need to carry oxygen. Wildlife experts argue that the railway route passing through the national parks Langtang and Sibapuri would have environmental threat to the nature and wildlife. Many endangered species, both birds and mammals, will disappear in near future. Ornithologists believe that these two national parks are home to one-third of the country's bird species. Both Nepal and China have identified 9 projects so far as part of BRI. The BRI identified 9 projects include the Kerung Kathmandu Rail, Kimathangka Hile Road Development, Rasuagari Kathmandu Road Improvement, Galchi Rasuagari Kerung 400 kV transmission line, Dipail Chinese Southern Border Road construction, Tokha Bidur Road, 426 megawatt Phukot Karnali Hydro Electric Project, 762 megawatt Tamor Hydro Electric Project and the Madan Bhandari Technical Institute. However, a tweet from the Chinese embassy in Kathmandu sparked debate in the Nepali media just one day before the opening of the Pokhara Regional International Airport. The Chinese embassy in Nepal stated on Twitter that this airport, Pokhara Airport, is the flagship project of the China-Nepal BRI cooperation. It was never stated in the documents that the Pokhara Airport is covered by the BRI. However, if there are any records that haven't been released, the relevant authorities must have them public. Major ongoing initiatives funded by Chinese include some of the following: power plant and transmission line projects for the Upper Trishuli Hydro Power Project, assistance with food and materials in the 15 northern bordering districts, Larcha Tatopani and Timure Rasuagadi Frontier Inspection Station Project, Pokhara International Regional Airport, upgrading Sapruvesi Rasuagadi Road, upgrading Civil Service Hospital, Kathmandu Ring Road Improvement Project, improvements to the Kodari Highway and repairs to the Boring Bridge in Rasuagadi and Kodari. So, these are some bilateral projects. Zhao Leji, chairman of the Standing Committee of the Chinese National People's Congress, expressed gratitude to Nepal for its active response to and support for the GDI, as well as its welcome support for the and participation in the Global Security Initiative GSI and the Global Connectivity Initiative GCI to jointly promote peace, stability and prosperity in the region and the wider world. He made these remarks during a meeting with Ganesh Prasad Timilsina, chair of the National Assembly recently. At the Great Hall of the People in Beijing on Monday night, June 13, 2023, Timilsina spoke with Zhao. He asserted that Nepal's foreign policy forbids it from joining any security or military alliances, despite persistent requests by Chinese leaders for Nepal to support the GSI from Nepali leaders, bureaucrats and diplomats. Now, let me share with you the interesting case study on Sri Lanka's BRI. Sri Lanka has experience in the commercially failed Hambantota port project. Sri Lanka sold 70% of its stake to the port to a Chinese state-owned firm on a lease for 99 years to repay the debt it owed Beijing. India was first country Sri Lanka requested for financial help to build Hambantota port. However, the request was rejected as India deemed the project commercially unviable. In 2000 2006-2007, Sri Lanka tried to seek a preferential loan from China, but China was unable to provide funds. Then Sri Lankan official negotiated on London Interbank Offered Rate LIBOR that was around 5.5%, and rising Export-Import Bank of China agreed to fund 85% of Hambantota Port's first phase construction with a 15-year commercial loan of US $306 million at an interest rate of 6.3%, including a management fee of 0.3%. SLPA, Sri Lanka Ports Authority, operated the port from 2012 to 2014. It saw little traffic. Businesses failed as SLPA did not have a strategic international partner. Hambantota Port was unable to generate adequate revenue to meet its debt obligation. By the end of 2016, it suffered the loss of US $304 million. China neither enticed nor compelled Sri Lanka to borrow money. Sri Lanka's total sovereign debt prior to May 2019 stands at about US $65 billion. China only accounts for US $8.5 billion of the total foreign debt, of which Hambantota Port is only $1.2 billion US dollar. Sri Lanka's corporate governance system and practices have been largely influenced by British system and post-government economic policies. Common issue of corporate governance is concentrate ownership, institutions, directors and individuals. Very small percent of equity holders control large amount of shares. Some corporate scandal in Sri Lanka are the bankruptcy of Pramukha Bank, Vanic Incorporation, Lanka Marine Service Limited, Sri Lanka's Insurance Corporation and the Golden Key Credit Card Company. In this context, a scholar argue that lack of transparency in loan repayment terms, difficulties in assessing finance and poor environmental standards are all making countries rethink their strategy. How Nepal can be benefiting, minimizing reliance on India. India has already imposed 3 blockades on Nepal. In 1970, the first blockade occurred as a trading route with China. Nepal developed the Kodari Highway between Kathmandu and Tatopani. In 1970, India impeded the entry of commodities into Nepal. It did not, however, persist very long. The second blockade, which began on April 1989 and lasted for 15 months under the guise of purchasing Chinese weapons, was imposed. The third one happened in 2015 when there was a 4-month border blockade between India and Nepal. It started just after Nepal's new constitution was enacted on September 20. At that time, the people of Nepal were beginning to recover from the tragic and devastating earthquake of April 2015. The blockade not only caused a crisis in Nepal due to the shortage of fuel, medicine and other necessities, but it also increased resentment and hostility towards the Modi government. Through this obstruction, the first neighborhood policy was also tested. Nepal had to consider alternate trade routes due to the economic blockade. Nepal has forced to seek north in order to diversify its commerce and end its unbalanced dependence on India. One researcher claims that Nepal can profit from important assets including the railway, energy plant, gas pipeline and road network in its northern region. Telecommunications and ICT, transnational transmission lines, urban infrastructure and hydropower projects can all present potential. Since completing the on-site electrical testing work in Nepal on February 24, 2023, the cross-border power line between China and Nepal has made progress. The cross-border power grid interconnection project between both countries, project director told that the project is essential for luring Chinese investment into Nepal's hydropower industry and for selling electricity to China. The 70-kilometer project will enable electricity exchange between the two nations and be able to transport 5,000 megawatt of power across the border, according to Global Times June 10, 2023. This will be a different approach to reducing Indian reliance on Nepal's hydropower industry. Nepal should safeguard the national interests, prioritizing the agenda on fostering Nepal-China relations. Following recommendations are given. Priority should be given to affordable road connectivity over pricely train connectivity. Nepal should not be a part of China's Global Security Initiative (GSI). The establishment of industrial park and the search for suitable locations for semi-industrialization while utilizing our core capabilities should be the top goals. Chinese investment should concentrate on large-scale initiatives like mega hydropower, world-class universities outside of Kathmandu, and housing project in smart cities rather than competing with local investors. China should refrain from making investments in delicate industries including telecommunications, hotels and restaurants in Kathmandu, hospitals and colleges. Small and medium-sized enterprises engage in pottery, wood and metal carving and other traditional handicraft companies should not be harmed or replaced by Chinese investments. Chinese capital should not be used to purchase land. Chinese FDI may be acceptable in manufacturing, including the construction of assembly line for automobiles, bicycles and motorcycle, among other things. The ecological balance and climate change are important challenges. Polluting industries that harm our environment should not be selected. It must be a good idea for the BRI to incorporate environment, social and corporate governance concern into its business processes in order to uphold the highest international standard. Additionally, it is frequently argued because investment in infrastructure in underdeveloped nations frequently result in corruption, pollution and violation of human rights. In a summary, 3 policy level recommendations are made. Number 1, the initiative needs to be more transparent and subject to closer examination. Number 2, the BRI steering committee needs to be established, and number 3, to stop bribery and corruption, an international standard regulatory governance structure needs to be formed. So that's all I have to say in this episode, and thank you for watching me. I'll be coming up with new themes in the days to come. Thank you very much.